Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of the Worthiness Codes. I'm your host, Jaclyn Francis, and as always, it's so beautiful to be in this space with you today. So, just given everything that's happening around us with eclipse season and with the chaotic energy that's going on in our collective, as well as these recent solar flares that we just had, the energy has been a little bit out of sorts, we can say, than what our human body is used to experiencing. So I wanted to go through one really important topic, which is integration, to give you an idea about what integration is, why it's important, and what you may experience during integration. And we can refer to these experiences as ascension symptoms. As you know, I'm not one for labels, but this is the phrase that most people use when talking about a lot of the symptoms that your body experiences as it's going through a really big shift and receiving upgrades and receiving the new energy that it soon will be holding. So, integration, just to back up a little bit. Integration is the point in your journey that you experience after a shift. So after you do the inner work, after you have a healing session, after you sit in some sort of ceremony. And essentially what it is a period where your physical body is catching up to your energetic body. If we look at energy, there is no density to it because energy is not held to the constructs of time and space. So if you can only imagine the work that you do when you are in a ceremony and the amount of energy that you're shifting and activating and releasing and moving through, if you can visualize that happening within the void, within the quantum field, whatever resonates with you, it's happening within the infinite soul that you are, within the infinite amount of space that there is. So the energy that you're moving through, the frequency that this energy holds is incredibly vast. It's of a higher vibrational frequency than your human body resides at. So because your human body is solid, it has density to it, it needs to go through a process of its own to be able to hold this newfound frequency of energy that you received. So during integration, you are oftentimes called into a really deep period of solitude, a deep period of rest, a deep period of stillness, where you will need to be gentle with yourself. You will need to nourish your physical body through rest again, and also through leaning on the elements of the earth. So putting your feet in the sand or taking a dip into the ocean or going on a walk in the forest, right? Wherever you live, however the earth can support you with where you're at, allowing the earth to do its job and help you ground back in. Because in order to hold this newfound frequency, your body also has to be very rooted and very grounded. So if you can look at it, right, just to visualize it, I want you to think about the inner work and the healing and the energy that you are shifting as this beautiful ball of white light and looking at your human vessel as your human vessel. The white light will essentially pour into your human body, and your human body will be raising the frequency to be able to hold this new energy. And the human body has to be rooted within the earth plane for then the energy that you receive to be experienced within your outer reality, right? Because so within, so without. So there's a lot of shifting that's happening. And this is something that consists of you doing the inner work. So this is what happens when you sit with yourself. This is what happens when you heal trauma. This is what happens when you expand your being. There's a lot more to it than just releasing energy or just gaining a new aspect of self or a new perspective, right? So there's a lot of pieces that are at play. And the one thing that you are meant to do through all of this is to allow yourself to integrate. So again, like I said, you'll be called into rest. So physical rest, taking a step back from the go, go, go and do mentality to either lie on your spine in your bed, binge TV. Honestly, that's something that my body needs to do when I'm integrating. Yes, I will go on a walk or I'll put my feet in the sand because I live by the beach. But whenever I'm integrating, my body really just needs solitude. And I'll sit and I'll journal and I'll reflect, but I won't bring myself into a deep meditative state. I don't expand on the vertical plane. I really allow my body to just be. And for me, that's binge watching TV. And I binge watch TV in a way that I can't watch anything dark. I can't watch anything too intense like Housewives. I love Housewives, but I literally can't watch Housewives when people are screaming at each other during integration. I watched Inside Out 2 recently. Like I'll watch Disney shows. I started Virgin River, like these lighthearted TV shows that make you feel good and aren't too intense. That is how my body is called to integrate into deep rest, while also taking times to journal, to reflect on how I'm feeling, to reflect on what I'm moving through, because a lot of the time during integration, other emotions are going to come up to surface. And those emotions can look like deeper layers of what you moved through within your ceremony while doing the inner work. It can also look like, and this is what I typically experience, a lot of shadows, a lot of darkness coming up to surface. And what I realized is because as you heal and as you expand, you are, of course, expanding into your light and expanding your roots into your darkness to plant the foundation, to integrate the darkness within you, the shadows within you, to then be able to expand upwardly, expand into your light. It happens simultaneously. So when you're doing the inner work and you're shifting the darkness within you, your shadows, your traumas, right? You're working through all of that. You're simultaneously expanding into your light. You can also look at it as you're using your light to illuminate the darkness within. So it all works together. There's no linear process to this. There's no linear order to this. So when you're integrating, you're still, that energy that you moved through is still shifting. It's still expanding, again, because your physical body is playing catch up to it. So a lot of the time, like I said, I experience more shadows coming to surface. And what I realized recently, and this was a big lesson of mine, this is something that I've experienced time and time again. And it wasn't until this last eclipse where it like smacked me right in the face. And I was like, oh my God, this is a huge lesson that I'm meant to learn, is through a really big expansion. And this happens when it's like a profound expansion, a profound shift. So not always, but through the bigger ones, when you're really expanding your sense of self. And how I experience it during my integration is a really dark aspect of self comes to surface, usually rooted in some sort of fear. And I've always looked at this darkness as a way to like knock me off my path, to get me from expanding into my light. And yes, that can be a way to look at it. But that's giving your power away to something. When you give your power away to something, especially an energy, especially a shadow or darker aspect of self, that shadow, that trauma, that energy will grow because you're putting your energy into it. So what I realized during this recent integration on the solar eclipse, following the solar eclipse, was that whatever is coming to surface that does not serve me, and it is a shadow, I'm meant to stay in my center. I'm meant to just sit, to be gentle, right? Integration is all about being gentle, and to just listen, to remain neutral, and to give these energies unconditional love. And what I realized was when you sit there and you don't give your power away, you stay in your self-mastery, you stay in your center, and you just listen and you remain neutral and you just give the energy unconditional love, what happens is then that energy is integrated into your being. Just as the expansion of all that you've received is being integrated, the darkness that you worked through is now being integrated as well. But maybe during your ceremony, these aspects of self rooted in the shadow, rooted in the darkness, were maybe in your subconscious mind, or they weren't so front and center. So now they're showcasing themselves to you so you can look at it. Because all the darkness is, all your shadows are aspects of self that you've been ignoring, that you're not accepting. And when you live in the frequency of unconditional love, you understand that everything deserves unconditional love, even the darkness, right? These shadows, these traumas, these energies that are rooted in your being, imprinted on your soul, they're part of who you are. And yes, of course, we can transmute some of these energies, we can release some of these energies, and it all depends on where you're at within your soul's evolution and how these energies are meant to be dealt with. And only you can understand that. But most of the time, when it comes to shadows or it comes to darker energies, they need to be integrated into your being. And the only way to do that is to see them, to acknowledge them, to feel them, to release or transmute the parts of them that are meant to be, and then to integrate them into you. And now I want to be clear because I don't want to confuse anyone. When we look at trauma, right, those are typically energies that are imprinted on our souls, especially if it's trauma that you experienced within this lifetime. And I recorded an episode about trauma. I'm not sure what episode it is, what episode number, but if this is something you're interested in healing and working with your traumas, I invite you to go back and really listen to that episode because I dive into it much deeper. But trauma experience in this lifetime is an imprint on your soul. So there really is no way to release that. You can release and transmute the energies that stem from that trauma that aren't serving you. But when it comes to that trauma, and all of the things that it holds that are a part of you, right? You have to integrate it. You have to show it unconditional love. So speaking out loud and just making this really clear, I think it's a dance. It's a dance between releasing energy. It's a dance between transmuting energy. And it's a dance between integrating energy. And only you, as the soul, as the person who has lived these traumas, who is coming face to face with their shadows, is moving through their ancestral lineage, only your soul knows if you're meant to release something, if you're meant to transmute something, if you're meant to integrate something. And I'll give you an example, maybe that will help. Say in this lifetime, you had someone very close to you pass away, right? Grief, death of a loved one, that's a big T trauma. So that trauma will always be imprinted on your soul because it's a really major experience that you experience within this lifetime, within this body, that you can't just forget, that you can't just release, and you're not meant to release it because it happened for a reason. So you're meant to grow from it and take something from it in whatever way that your soul is meant to learn from it in this lifetime. So that trauma is not meant to be released, nor is it meant to be transmuted. That trauma is meant to be integrated. So when you sit with that trauma and you move through all of the emotions that come up from that trauma, it's sending it unconditional love. Unconditional love. So then when you think about that memory of that person or that experience, you're no longer moving into this place of grief. And of course, there's so many layers to grief that it will probably always be there in some aspect, but the energy of unconditional love exceeds the other energies of grief or sadness, okay? So that's what happens when you integrate. Now, looking at that experience of a loved one passing away, say they passed away from a motorcycle accident, and now you have a fear of motorcycles, okay? So looking at that fear, that is when you can really move through that fear to release the energies rooted in fear because they're not serving you. So you can release them or you can transmute them. You can transmute that fear into joy or into wealth, is how I like to teach transmuting energy, because wealth is the highest aspect of all high vibrational energies, right? So when you release or you transmute some of the patterns or some of the emotions that are stemming from the trauma that you've integrated, you can then release the energy. And when you release the energy, you're always going to be brought back into integration. So you're always going to be brought back into integrating the energy that was released, that was transmuted, that was moved through. This is the integration process that happens afterwards. So it can happen in layers. And there's really no right or wrong way to do this. Only your soul knows what it's meant to do, because everything has layers to it. Everything is infinite that lives within you. So you have to trust your soul. You have to trust your soul on this. But when it comes to integration following a ceremony, this is crucial, because when things come to surface during integration, it's a deeper aspect of the energy that wants to be presented to you, that needs to be integrated, right? So again, you can release something, you can transmute something, you can even integrate something during your healing ceremony, during doing the inner work. But when it pops up during actual integration following the ceremony, it's because it's being integrated. So what you're meant to do is to not dive deeper into the energy and really feel the emotions and give yourself a way to it, to move through it, like you might have done when you're in ceremony. Because as you know, when you're sitting in ceremony, there's a lot of emotions. You have to really feel to move through something. When you're in integration, it's different. You're feeling the energy, but you're remaining neutral. So instead of diving headfirst into the energy, you're holding your center, you're holding the energy, and you're remaining neutral. You're allowing the things to come up to surface, but you're really just sending it unconditional love. And that is how it becomes integrated within your being, right? So that's integration of the darker aspects. So when I was recently integrating a lot of the energy that I was moving through, I was confronted with shadows. And like I said, it smacked me right in the face. And I said, okay, no, I'm not. Because what I would usually do is just dive into another ceremony, dive into healing and giving away to the energy and feeling into it deeper. And I didn't realize that though that's beautiful to really feel something that deeply, it was missing the core aspect of what needed to be integrated through unconditional love, right? So during your integration, if something that's uncomfortable comes up to surface again, sit with it, allow yourself to feel it, and just send it unconditional love. Send it unconditional love. And you will see how quickly the energy shifts, how quickly the energy goes from maybe a repetitive narrative that's not serving you to it being integrated into your being, and you're no longer thinking about it. And that's what happened with me. And this has happened time and time again. But what I've experienced in the past, when a different narrative would come to surface, I would really be fearful of it, and I would give myself into it, and I would sit into it. I would divulge my energy into it, and it would just grow, and it would grow, and it would grow, and it would grow. And it didn't fully go away until I had to ask someone to help. And this is, we can call it an entity. I don't want to use that word because I don't want to scare anyone, but that's typically what happens. I look at entities as a part of your being that is a darker aspect of self, and it is an energy that's really strong. It's really strong. And it's presenting itself to you really strongly because it wants you to look at it, and it wants unconditional love. Dark energies just need unconditional love. And when you send it unconditional love, that's when they become integrated, or that's when they go away. And again, your soul knows. So if there's something that you're working through and sending in unconditional love is not integrating it, and it still feels like it's growing and the narrative or the experience is continuing to present itself to you strongly, seek outside help to support you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a really important thing to make sure that you're able to ask for help. Women don't ask for help. I'm someone who I have a hard time asking for help. I think I can do everything on my own. And though I can do a lot on my own, there comes a point in time when you need help, especially with healing. You're not meant to do it on your own all the time. So trust your soul and listen. But this is a very normal part of the integration process. So you're not taking 10 steps backwards. Sometimes you will hear, oh my goodness, tongue-tied over here. You will hear people say that oftentimes during the healing process, you feel like you're taking 10 steps back. That's not the case. That's integration, right? Those are the things that are coming to surface that are just integrating, and you're meant to give it unconditional love. So you're not taking 10 steps back. You're moving through the upward spiral. It's a spiral because you're growing into the light. You're growing upward. At the same time, you're growing downward, building your foundation, moving through other aspects of yourself. Everything is rooted in the light. We just say that these darker aspects of self are darkness because they're parts of you that haven't seen the light. They're parts of you that you don't necessarily love. But when you give it unconditional love, what's happening is you're bringing your light into that darkness and integrating your light into that darkness. So now it just exists. Because when you live in the frequency of unconditional love, there is no such thing as duality. There is no light versus dark. There is no good versus bad. It just is. And there's unconditional love to everything. So that's the power of living in the frequency of unconditional love. So during your integration process, remain in your center. Remain in your power. Be so gentle to yourself. Know that you're not taking 10 steps backwards, but you're moving up the spiral. And the quickest way to move up the spiral to have the shift, which I'll get into in a second, is to remain neutral. To remain neutral. So the shift, the energetic shift, is when you move through your integration and everything is integrated, where your newfound energy that you expanded, that you shifted, that you awakened, however you want to look at it, is now being embodied into this vessel, into this beautiful body. You're embodying that energy. Your body, your physical body, is able to hold that energy. And now that energy is a part of you. You are a part of the energy. You're back into wholeness with this new energy. Okay? And at the same time, your external reality is reflecting the embodiment of this new energy. Typically, the external takes the longest to catch up because there's a lot of other moving parts. But you can feel the energy around you. The more you do this work, the more sensitive you become to energy, and you'll be able to feel the energetics around you being in more alignment to where you're at now. So the shift is when this happens, when you're done with integration and it's just like you wake up one morning and you're like, okay, I'm here. I feel amazing. I feel I feel like a new version of self has just been reborn. And depending on what it was that you worked through, how profound the experience was, how profound the energy was, will depend on how profound the shift is as well. So integration can take anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks to a couple of months to even years. I've recently feel like I'm integrating parts that were awakened within me from years ago that I'm now really able to embody because I've awakened more aspects of self that are able to hold that frequency. This is again why healing is not linear. It is not linear. It doesn't work that way. So just always be gentle to yourself, but the shift is the best part. This is why we do the inner work, is to have the energetic shift, to embody. And now, if you don't allow yourself to go through an integration process, this is bypassing the work. You are just bypassing it. So if you're someone who had a really beautiful ceremony, you moved through a lot of trauma, and what happens is, the next day you sit and you move through more trauma. And then the next day you go and you go out and party. The next day you sit in a mushroom ceremony. The next day you move through more trauma. And you're on this cycle of just not allowing your body to rest, to digest it, but you're constantly doing something to do the inner work. There is no period for you to integrate. There is no period where you actually allowed yourself to feel what was being integrated to then allow it to actually be integrated. There was no reflection. There was no space to allow the new energy to be met with the new body that your body was shifting into, right? It's a match. So bypassing the work is the worst thing you can do, because instead of it being truly an embodiment of self, where you are authentically embodying the new energy that you received, what happens is that the embodiment becomes rooted within the spiritual ego. And when something is rooted within the spiritual ego, it's surface level. So the spiritual ego, many people have it within the spiritual community. I have had one too. And it was at the beginning of my journey when I didn't really understand what was happening. And I was like, oh, there's no way other people experience the things that I experience. And I can feel my ego, my spiritual ego, on its high horse. And it will happen. If it hasn't happened to you, it most likely has happened. So when you can become aware of it, it's good. So then you're like, okay, this is not working out, because no one wants a spiritual ego. We don't want that. But what happens is it integrates on the surface. So then people who are bypassing the work are moving through life within their spiritual ego, love and light, and this happened to me and I do this and now I'm here, and just talking from a place of the ego without actually embodying the energy that they moved through, because there was no space for their physical body to receive. And you can tell when someone's the embodiment of their work versus when someone hasn't embodied anything. And it's usually through authenticity, the way they show up, the sound of their voice when they're speaking about things, right? If they're rooted and grounded and a bridge, that's people who are embodying what they're doing. So it's really good to become aware of this. Do not judge. Do not be ashamed. Like I said, I sat here, raised my hand saying, yes, I had a spiritual ego when I, first started this. And my spiritual ego comes and meets me different points on my journey. And now I have the awareness of how she likes to show up. And I'm just like, okay, let's ground ourselves here. Let's ground ourselves here and let's see what hasn't been integrated, what I haven't looked at and why this is showing up for me. Okay. And the last thing I want to get to are ascension symptoms. So Ascension symptoms, this is how people usually talk about it. All it is are experiences that you will most likely go through during your integration. And this will happen, at least for me, whenever I'm about to step into like a bigger ceremony. I can feel some of these symptoms happen days prior, as well as days or weeks following my integration, following the shift. So I listed out 10 of my top symptoms that I typically experience when I'm in integration mode. If you Google Ascension symptoms, you will literally be confronted with every single symptom under the book. And I think that's overwhelming. I don't think it helps anyone. Again, we don't even need to know these things. As long as we trust our soul, as long as we're able to remain neutral, then we can understand that this is all happening for us and it's just part of the process. But I do want to bring awareness to these things, because if you are new to this, it can be unsettling, it can be confusing, and it can be scary. So my top 10 that I've experienced at least once, but most of these, because they're in my top 10, I experience them almost every time I go through a really big shift. So Ascension symptoms can be the following: stomach issues, changes in your diet within the foods you crave, as well as what you are able to digest, feeling ungrounded, heightened energy within your crown chakra, anxious thoughts, physical exhaustion and sleeping more than usual, not being able to fall asleep or waking up in the middle of the night, unexplained discomfort being in your body similar to growing pains, cold and flu-like symptoms, and the last one, memory loss. So I've experienced these time and time again. The most common one for me are stomach related issues, digestion. I typically, when I'm integrating, I will purge, do through bottom purging, which is basically just shitting, full transparency, but having like digestive issues that way. And also changes in my diet. My family literally thinks like, they think I'm crazy, but they love me. But especially when it comes to diet, it's the funniest thing, because every time I see them, they're like, okay, Jaclyn, so what are we eating now? And what I realized, it's because when you are in a cycle, and this past year, I have been through so many deaths and rebirths. I have been through so much of the inner work. I have expanded. I have shedded more than ever. I think more than a normal person would within a year, but this was part of my journey and I experienced it for a very specific reason. I don't suggest anyone go through such a intense ascension process within a year unless they really feel called to it. But my diet has changed so much, and I will crave meat one day and the next day I won't be able to stomach meat. So a lot of the time when you are going through a big shift, meat is not something that you want to digest. It's usually fruits and vegetables and super clean and super light, again, because your physical body has density to it. So you want the vessel to be clear. So then again, it can hold the energy that you've received. Sometimes when you go through a big shift, though, you may have a hard time like grounding, allowing your body to ground. So eating more substantial foods like red meat, I have found that it helps you ground. So again, it just depends, and it's never really one size fits all. I've moved through, different diets during different types of integration. So it's up in the air. Heightened energy within your crown chakra and anxious thoughts. Like I said, you can feel this a few days leading up if it's going to be a big shift, and it's usually heightened energy within the crown. That's how I've experienced it. Anxious thoughts are those things, those shadows, those darker aspects of self that are bubbling to surface. So that's why it's important to remain neutral and not let your anxious thoughts get the best of you, but to sit there, feel them, and just send it unconditional love. Sleeping, yes, your body needs rest. Your body needs rest. Think of it from like a nervous system perspective. When you're constantly running on energy that isn't serving you and you're constantly on the go, when you take a moment to heal and to shed a lot of the energies that aren't serving you, your nervous system is getting a reboot. So your nervous system needs to take a breather, needs to relax. And it's literally telling you like, oh my God, I've been running on fumes. Now I've allowed myself to feel the other side of that. And now I need to catch up to that. So we're literally like, I'm not doing anything and I need to rest. So that's why you're called into needing to rest. Again, also while your physical body needs to create the space, and it can't create the space if it doesn't have the space to create it. And the last one I want to touch on, because this was the most wild one for me, was memory loss. This is something that I started experiencing over this last awakening that I had this past year, going through my Ascension journey. And at first I was like, what is happening? Why can't I remember anything? It started to scare me. I was like, I'm at the time 33 years old. Like, I should not be losing my memory. And the more that I expanded and gained higher consciousness, the more I understood that this is how you remain in the present. This is how you remain in the now. When you aren't constantly allowing your mind to shift back into the past, you're more capable of staying present. And that's what was happening. It's not essentially memory loss, but I look at it as just like a reorganization within your brain. Putting all the things that do not matter, that you don't need to know, away in the filing cabinet. And if I really needed to remember something, I probably would have to give it more energy and really shift my awareness into that space, instead of it just like coming through and easily bringing my awareness there. So it's all a part of ascending, of awakening, of living through a higher lens of consciousness, because when you're in that place, you are very rooted in the now. You're not worried about the past. You're not worried about the future. You're just here. You're just existing. And all that matters is what's happening right now, right here in this present moment. So if you're experiencing memory loss, know it's, yes, a part of your ascension, a part of your awakening, but it's beautiful because you're really shifting. Your being is really shifting into a higher state of being because you're able to anchor into the now. So this was my scariest, but also my most favorite, because it was a reflection of really how far I've come. So those are the top 10. If you want to rewind, go back, listen, jot down some notes, go ahead. Again, you don't need to know these things. And there are a lot more. You can Google it and you'll be like, this is literally everything in the book. Know that when you're integrating, you're experiencing things for a reason, and it's supporting you. And always trust your soul. If something really does not feel right within your body, go ahead and, get support, whether that's going to the doctor or the ER, I don't know, like whatever you feel like you have to do it. But your soul knows. And when you get to a place where you're really connected to your inner knowing, to your soul, to your higher self, to the intelligence of your body, you'll know when something's not right. And most of the time, this is all right. This is all exactly what's meant to be happening. It's all here to serve you. It's all here to support you within the shift. So, no matter where you are on your journey, always know that integration is important. Whether that's if you're currently in an integration process or you're about to sit in a ceremony, accept the invitation to integrate, because you don't want to bypass the work. Because when you bypass the work, you're living through the spiritual ego. It's just happening on the surface and no actual work is being done because it's not being integrated. And the biggest piece of advice to remember is when you're integrating and the darker aspects of self bubble up to surface, instead of giving your energy away to them, diving in deeper to those energies, send it love, remain in your center, remain neutral, and just send it unconditional love. Because more times than not, it's showing up for a reason. And whether that's to teach you a lesson completely outside of what the energy is presenting you with, which in my case, that was the example, or if it's just a deeper aspect of self that's being presented that you move through in the healing, whichever, way resonates with you, whatever you're moving through, everyone's different. Every situation is unique. Just feel it and feel unconditional love and give it to the energy. Give it to the energy. Okay, that's all. I hope this was helpful. This is very present in my field following the eclipse, so I wanted to share it because I know the energy is probably just going to get more intense within the collective, within the outside world, and it's important to not allow anything outside of you take you outside of your power, to always remain in your self-mastery, to know that staying neutral, staying in your center, sharing unconditional love with everything that comes your way is your truest essence of power, because you are worthy of being there. You're worthy of living life from there. So yes, there are things that happen around us in society, and we always have to hold compassion, and we always have to, do what we can to be supportive, and however that resonates with you. But just by living in the frequency of unconditional love and sharing your light and showing up authentically from the place of pureness, from the place of your heart, that creates a ripple effect within society beyond what you can even understand, and beyond what others who don't understand will ever be able to project back to you. So know that you're doing the work just by being here, just by living from that place, by knowing that you are worthy of all of this. So I love you. I love you. I love you. Until next time. Bye.